Well, welcome back to Cougar Chronicle. And did I have fun talking about little ones?
You and the little ones,
I
tell
enjoy
you.
them.
So, real funny story, real quick.
Okay.
So, I'm in my first superintendency in Missouri. I've been a secondary guy my entire career.
Right.
High school principal, high school assistant principal, high school
difference.
teacher,
Yeah.
alternative school teacher with older kids. I mean, I've been around everything. And I remember, you spend a lot of time in the schools, and great teaching is great teaching. But I remember spending the first week of school when I was a superintendent, going to the elementary, and when the kids were there. And all of a sudden, randomly, this kid comes up and hugs my leg. And I'm standing with the elementary principal, and I'm like, Brian was there. I'm like, Brian, why is he hugging me? Why? And he's like, and you're like, because he wants to say hello. And you're like, hello, little buddy. And so kind of one of those moments.
It's a different experience. It really is.
But it evolved to me dressing up and me driving the bus and those guys to the pumpkin patch and all that stuff. So once you had to get past the initial fear,
you do. Right.
ensure there wasn't any snot or anything on your pants, and then you move on.
And change your clothes every day in school.
Always move on. So
listen, I wanted to leave before this segment because I was so embarrassed. We have our head of our facilities, Brett, coming in, and when I interviewed him for one of our other shows, I said your last name wrong the whole time.
Okay.
So I just I go like this.
Well, don't you pronounce it, because then I'll pronounce it wrong. Probably on purpose. But Brett Pare is our Director of Facilities, and the linchpin of making sure that we have everything going on.
Big job.
Big vision, big things in place. I know he's so excited to talk, as a lot of our captive audience people. So thanks so much for being
thanks
here.
Thanks for having me.
Appreciate that. Brett does such a great job, and I
truly
we spend a lot of time. I have a beautiful opportunity to really delve in deep in the relationships and work hand in hand with a lot of folks. And my background with my dad was a facilities guy, so not that I have an opinion on everything that Brett did.
I don't know if I knew that.
Yeah, Dad was, my father's a retired facilities guy, so was a maintenance manager, big companies. Doesn't mean that I have all the answers, but I have a pretty good idea when he's trying to snow me on something. And so we go from there, but give a lot of trouble. But Brett does a phenomenal job, him and his team. You've got Scott Lanier, who's the assistant associate director, and then we have Shannon, who is working with you guys, is pretty much the glue that holds the group together, and everything go from there. The reason I wanted Brett to come in is so we just come out of deliberative session. We had questions on roofing structure, and there's always facility things, and so we really wanted to kind of address some of those facility pieces. We have the long-term, in-depth, I don't know what even to call it, it's like a microscope work with the LaValle Brensinger, the architectural group, that's really trying to look at all of the buildings. And Brett, talk to us a little bit about some of that stuff. Kind of dive into why things cost so much and why maybe some things aren't moving forward that people thought they might be. So I threw a whole bunch of stuff on the table. Yeah. Again, thank you for being here.
Yeah, no problem.
It's a big job.
We got oxygen ready.
Big job. Lots of buildings, lots of stuff.
Let's start first with the deliberative piece. One of the things that had come up was a question on the trust, on the roofing trust, and wondering about the repair and replacement, that $1 million wasn't going to do that.
Yep.
Talk a little bit about the state of our roofs right now.
Yeah, so 2 summers ago, we did a comprehensive roof study throughout the entire district just to kind of see where we are and what we needed to plan for in the future. And when those results came back, every roof in the district, it was suggested that within the next 3 to 5 years, we really should be putting new roofs on all these schools. Yeah. So that's one of the biggest pieces of what we're trying to address moving forward.
It's a lot more than $1 million.
Yeah,
it's crazy.
And we had $1 million planned out for just trying to do repair work on the high school roof.
Gotcha.
And what did we find out there?
Yeah, I think, it's difficult when we have these roofs that are as old as they are, because it kind of dominoes into all aspects of the building. At the high school, for example, when we talk about replacing the roof, that then is, we have to replace all the rooftop units that are on there because of the age and the complexity of pulling them off and putting them back on. And then that'll trigger other things within the building, such as fire alarm systems. So really, when you tackle something as big as a roof, it's going to kind of snowball into a lot of other ares within the building, and that's where those costs kind of, go up significantly.
As a homeowner, you take the roof off and you're finding rot, or you're finding mold, or that's kind of scary.
But what doesn't happen is when you replace your roof, you can do the underneath work, but you don't have state inspector coming in going, the pitch of that roof needs to be adjusted for the place. And so those are the things that we're running in, is that we're coming up to new codes that we have to adapt. So when we look at the structure and we look at those roof pieces, one of the conversations that Brett and I had is, we know we have a leaking roof at the high school. But if we fix the leaking roof, because we have a leaking roof because of drainage and because of heat loss, especially in the wintertime, But if I fix the insulation so it doesn't, the snow stays on, now I've got to worry about snow load, and we have additional costs. So things of like, which is where when we say, okay, $1 million repair project really is a $6 to $10 million rebuild of the whole roof.
Yeah.
And those are the things that we run into, because when you work on, you patch your roof, you have a roofer come in and they do that. You fix things up to that housing code, but these industrial codes are so different, especially when we're talking school buildings.
And they change.
Yes.
Yeah.
And we have to meet the new code, not grandfather to the old ones.
Yeah.
And so we look at things like that. So, but Transition LaValle Brensinger is a group that we engaged with last spring to do a study. Real quick, what are they doing? Where are we at?
Yeah, so we're about halfway through a 2-year, we've referred to it as the comprehensive facilities review in the district. So for the last almost year now, we've really been diving into kind of the behind the scenes stuff. So we've had, structural, civil, mechanical engineers throughout all of our buildings, which has got us to a point where we have, a draft of what do these buildings look like and where do we need to go from here. So I think right now we're in a really pivotal time where we're looking at what we need to do to keep these buildings, safe, secure, and getting them to where we want them to be for the next 20 years. So I think there's still a lot of conversations, what does that look like? But we're definitely finding that a lot of these buildings do need a good amount of work.
It's not easy. Yeah.
It's not. And you're talking you have a historic building in Warner, the old regional high school. You look at the building of Sutton, and then obviously even the newest building at the middle school is an aging building. And so it's consistent upkeep. I'm finding out quickly that the winters can be a little tough here in New Hampshire. I grew up in New York, so they were tough there too. But there's consistent upkeep on a lot of those items. And the piece that we run into is as we look at some needing on expansion, not necessarily people want to look at expansion because of population, but we have program needs and statutory needs that we need to expand out with occupational therapy and preschool. Our preschool numbers are blowing up, as Nikki had talked about. And so we look at a lot of those things. We need that width room to grow. Up is hard because it becomes a whole roofing issue. And so we look at things like that. And the piece of it is we're kind of in a place, always transparently, we've got, about another 2 years before we make our final payment on the middle school bond issue. So then that gives us a time to inform the public of what we're finding, and everything will be transparent as we go through, visioning session of what the next moves could be. And then as we look at it, we brought in experts to say, what are some suggestions to do? We're talking about a school district that's almost a third of the size of Rhode Island that runs the thing that we do. How do we match up the needs of our community with the resources we have available? Yeah, and I think our goal is not to have the shiniest, fanciest new building, but really just looking at when the majority of our mechanical equipment is 20, 25 years old, and you have a serviceable life that's 20 to 25 years old. We're in a spot where we've really got to make sure that we can get these needs safety addressed, so we're not in a situation where we don't have heat or something like that. So I think that's the biggest focus, is just making sure we can sustain for the next 20 years with what we have. It's all sustainable.
Absolutely overwhelming, though. I mean, that's a big, and these are our buildings.
Yes.
Right? So that's where a lot of the costs come in, a lot of
and that's not even preventative maintenance. What's happening when Brett came on is it's not the preventative maintenance, it's the little things of like minor tuck pointing or things like that. Brett's been dealing with stuff that like for boiler units that are 5 to 10 years out of end of service. And so, and it's not, again, when you're talking about, it's not a $350 water heater that you might be able to get at Home Depot. Yeah. You're talking about a $800 to $1.2 million project, because you've got to take the wall down. You have to remove all this stuff. You have to retrofit. You have to, like I said, I fake it pretty well. So as we go through, and so that's why these things are big ticket items. And they're not wants, they're needs. Because if I don't have hot water, I can't clean dishes. We can't worry about hygiene. If I don't have hot water, I don't have heat. And so it becomes this necessity of pieces. And so appreciate, I mean, I know it's tough. Feels like, we jokingly say, like, every time I turn around, he's coming and asking for money, but everything is on the big back end, because one of the things, talk real quick about this grant that we got with the generator, the emergency generator, because that's been fascinating. Because it's not always asking for stuff. Sometimes there's chances to give back.
Right.
And this is one of those things.
Yeah, so when I first started, I was approached by the town of New London and their emergency management director to work with them to help establish this building here. The SAU is the town of New London's emergency shelter. So with working with Homeland Security in the state of New Hampshire, we were able to obtain a grant to get us a full building generator.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah, so over the last couple months, it's been kind of fun to see right outside my office window all the work that's led to us getting that generator. And just this week, we were able to test it for the first time. So
that's huge.
It's been great, just in time for winter. So really excited to have that in place and take advantage of that grant.
Having lived through the ice storm, right? It's so significant, and important.
And no, like, not even a flicker in the office. The changeover was instantaneous.
That is wonderful.
Which is so, if things were to happen, we're still able to run the businesses of things. And obviously then it's always as an emergency site in case of a disaster. Again, it's giving back to the community, as it should be.
Right, right. So it almost sounds, I mean, that's a gift. That's wonderful. And I mean, your job is layered. You're playing whack-a-mole, right, as problems come up, right? Trying to, solve that problem. But then you're also looking toward the future. And that's, do you do that in conjunction with your superintendent, assistant superintendent, and staff? But that's a big responsibility.
Yeah, and I think it's great, when we talk about all these projects, the implementation of new boilers and things like that, it's also an opportunity. It's something that we have to do, but it's an opportunity for us to be more sustainable. For example, at the high school, when we switched over our boilers, we were able to see a huge savings when it came to our propane costs. So little things like that really add up. Switching to LED lighting at some of our schools, we were able to save a good amount of kilowatt hours throughout the district. So projects that we're almost forced to do have, kind of two different areas of return, sustainability and keeping us going.
Okay, a minute left, Sean. What do you see with the future for facilities?
From my seat, and I'll keep it short, I think a lot of focus, as we get in, there's been a lot of emphasis on green technologies, on carbon neutral, and hearing that a lot. So as we look at programming and planning for the future, I know those have been the conversations that we've had. I do caution folks, they want to see those things now, and until we have this facility study done, I refuse to spend a bulk of taxpayer money on something that we might have to move or tear down that doesn't go long term. We want to build it once and build it right. That'll be for me.
Yeah, no, and I think, just making sure that we're able to have these facilities open and conduct what we do here on a daily basis. And I think there's a lot of work that we need to do, and it's a really exciting time and an opportunity to do that.
Yeah.
It's encouraging.
We've got such great teammates. So thanks so much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Appreciate you being on the team.
Thank you. Brett Pare, our facilities manager. I did it. Said it correctly this time.
You got it that time.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. And coming up, we'll be speaking with Michael Bissett and getting a debriefing on that deliberative session.
Yep, really good, exciting opportunity to really kind of talk about something that just happened that was poignant. And again, like we talked about earlier, just an amazing experience.
It was incredible.
So can't wait to break that down.
We'll talk more about it. Stay with us on Cougar Chronicle.